DC, welcome in. How you doing?
Oh, doing great, Martin. How are you this morning?
I'm doing great. Well, it's finally here. It's game week, and a lot of questions in the air. And, of course, the big question yesterday was who was going to be the starting quarterback. We'll save that for the end of the conversation if we need to. Nick Saban not giving it away, or did he give it away? We'll ask that question here in just a moment. Well, DC, as we look at Alabama versus Louisville, Vegas has told us no worries, no concerns, no issue. It's just a typical opening week for Bama against a weak opponent. Nick Saban said otherwise in his press conference. As you look at this game, what do you see as the biggest concern? Let's look at the offensive side of the ball first. What's your biggest concern with Alabama from an offensive standpoint?
Well, Martin, yesterday we put up the podcast and we looked at a couple of concerns on offense and defense. And I think going into this, if you listen to anything Coach Saban says throughout the fall camp, there's an overarching concern that we have a young team. We have a team that he has stressed toughness and mental toughness on. So it would appear to me, based on his comments and based on what I've been able to observe and see, that this team, being young, has a tendency to lose focus when something hard happens to them. And that's kind of exhibited itself in the scrimmages and in practice and ball security. So I think the number one overarching theme with the whole question mark is can Alabama avoid turnovers? I believe that's what Coach Saban has harped on. That's what he said. So I think turnovers are a big concern, especially our skill players carrying the ball technique-wise in the right way. As you well know, Martin, you had to go through those. It's tough to remember all that when you're getting hit and smashed in the mouth so many times during a game, and late in the game you're tired. But that's one of the fundamentals that unless you do it correctly, the other team can take advantage of that and get those balls out. So I think Louisville is going to be doing that. I think they're going to be concentrating on trying to get the ball out of our young receivers and our young playmakers' hands, and I think ball security is going to be important both for the quarterbacks and both for the ball, those on the offense to have the ball running with the ball. I think the other question mark that we highlighted yesterday on the podcast on offense is can our offensive line gel to a point to run block in a way that advances our running game and also protects our quarterbacks and gives them enough time to make decisions, good decisions on where to throw the ball and hit the open receivers in their progression. I think a lot of emphasis has been placed on quarterback and on our offense and scoring points. But as Martin, you know better than anybody else, being the great blocking fullback that you were on a '92 championship team, you can't run the ball and you can't throw the ball if you're laying on your backside.
That's
so
right.
I think that offensive line gelling, and when I tell you the offensive line, I'm talking about the five across the front. I'm talking about the tight ends and the blocking downfield by our wide receivers in our running game is going to be very important in this game. If that's a big question mark to me. If these best five, which I think, looking at the depth chart, that experiment became a little more than an experiment, and now it's going to be moving Alex Leatherwood to a guard position and moving Jedrick Wills out to a tackle position. That along with Pierce Baker at center and Williams at the other tackle and Lester Cotton at guard, if they can gel across the line, and if Hale Hinges and Irv Smith can come in the tight end H-back spot with those and gel together and have good blocking assignments, I think our running game is going to be something to just look at and be an awe over this year based on our running backs if that offensive line can gel. And that offensive line gelling and blocking is going to be imperative in this game. Whoever starts at quarterback, whoever plays quarterback, and having a good game, being able to throw the ball down the field against Louisville.
Speaking with DC and the Capstone Report presented by RollTideBama.com and FreelancePictures.com, you're talking about what's the biggest concerns for this weekend. You hit two things, ball security. What's one of the most interesting things, the teams that you had to be concerned with ball security the most was the teams who didn't feel like they had as good a chance defensively because they wanted to make game-changing plays by stripping the ball and all that. And young players are not as strong, number one, and number two, they tend not to take as good a care of the ball. So I'm sure that new defensive coordinator is going to try to take advantage of the young wide receivers. And, of course, the running backs are more experienced, but they're still going to be trying to strip the ball in traffic once the first guy gets there. The second part of what you mentioned, O-line, if the new defensive coordinator has any sense at all, he's going to do a lot of movement. He's going to do a lot of shifting and slants and angles and hopefully try to confuse, for the Louisville fans, try to confuse that Alabama front. So both of those are definitely legitimate concerns. We'll come back and get to some concerns on the defensive side of the ball, but let's check in with Pat. Pat has a question for you, DC, regarding the depth chart and Ben Davis. Welcome into the Blitz, Pat. What's on your mind?
Was in DC. I enjoy your segment. First off, I wanted to talk about the absence of Ben Davis on the depth chart, and I want to call the depth chart administrative fluff, for lack of a better term.
Why do you? Let me ask you this: why do you call it fluff?
Because that depth chart was put out strictly because Coach had to.
But do you think where when you look at that depth chart, what's on there that's not legit?
Exactly those positions on our linebackers.
What? There's
because those linebackers, you're going to see some speed that you haven't seen before, gentlemen.
But what I'm saying is,
I recruit from Anama.
Okay, let's look at the linebackers, and then I'll let DC get to. You got Christian Miller starting. You got Anthony Jennings starting, legit. Matt Wilson starting. Dylan Moses starting. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then the backups, you got Jamie Mosley for both outside linebackers. Are you saying that Ayaba Anoma and Cameron Latou should be in front of Jamie Mosley?
Yeah, one of them for sure.
Based on speed, remember football.
Based on that Jamie's hurt.
He's not hurt anymore.
Okay, I hope so. I hope you're right.
I'm just
saying it was done strictly because he had to put something out.
Yeah, but I think he did it. But remember, when he puts this out as a player, he may tell you that it's fluff. He may tell you he's only doing it, but the players are looking at this. As a former player,
players are looking at it. Maybe I'm hoping that the players that is looking at this is Ben Davis wanting to get off his butt and do what he's supposed to do.
That's why I said it may not be all fluff. DC, what's your thoughts on that?
Well, I think Pat has a good point. I don't think Coach Saban likes depth charts to begin with. He don't like giving his advantage to any team by saying that. I think he thinks it's an advantage. Let him know who's going to start. That's why you see a lot of these flashes on there. But I don't think it's fluff overall because what I understand from the inner workings and what people that I have inside, they're telling me there was a big meeting that goes on right after fall camp, and they decide which of the players they're going to invest their time in that they think have a starting role, a backup role, or a specialty role on the team. And those are the ones that they're going to invest their time in and play. And there's some other people they determined that if they're freshmen, they might see some playing time under the new redshirt rule, but they're not going to be their priority to get them playing time. They'll get playing time during mop-up duty and that sort of thing. If injuries replace stuff, they've got another set of players that aren't on that depth chart that they'll be their first go-to to pull in. And so, I think overall, my thoughts on this depth chart, he did have to put something out. But I think Coach Saban, when he's forced to do something, Martin, you always know that Coach Saban is going to use it to his advantage. So the people whose names are on there for a reason. The ones that's not on there, that's a subtle message to some of those players as well. I think the most, to answer your question about Ben Davis, I've said this on your show before, Martin, and I love Ben Davis. I want him to do well. I want him to excel. But I know for a fact from talking to others that have heard, to know what goes on, and Ben Davis is clear to him until he practices the way that Coach Saban wants him to practice. He's not going to be out of the back of that line until he does that. I think this was another message to him that, hey, you have opportunities to play here, but you're going to have to step up and do the things I want you to do in practice in order to get on the field. I think we'll see Ben Davis play this year, but I think this is a message to him.
Absolutely.
Wait, one more thing before we go, real quick, is pass. The quarterback. Hello?
We can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay. Is that Coach Saban recruited Jerron Pass very, very hard, and I think that Vegas has made a mistake. I do not gamble. I quit gambling because I think it's wrong. However, Jerron Pass is the real deal. And I'll hang up and listen to DC. Thank y'all. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Pat. Hey, DC, we'll come in on Jawan Pass because that's going to take us right into our next concern in terms of the defense. We're talking about the biggest concerns game week with Louisville. And as we were going to break, we got a question from Pat about Jawan Pass. Are the Alabama fans, Las Vegas, and others overlooking him? DC, I want you to hear Coach Saban's response to a question regarding Jawan Pass, a young man he recruited from Alex Bennington, I think is Byington. Alex Byington, yesterday at the press conference. And then I want to get your thoughts on it. So here's Alex with his question for Coach Saban.
Well, Alex, I will say this. This is, the first good question that we've had and should be what everybody's concerned about. You got an offense here that scores 38 points a game. We got almost all new guys playing on defense. And, that is definitely a challenge, for us, that not only the quarterback, the skill players they have, the balance that they have on offense and the way they were able to run the ball a year ago, as well as throw it effectively, score points against just about everybody they played against. There is I wouldn't say it's a concern, but I'd say, how are we going to establish an identity on defense with the players that we have? They're going to play together. They're going to be able to sustain performance. If something bad happens, are they going to respond the right way? I mean, these are all things to me that take a lot of discipline and mental toughness to be able to play for any player. But when you have a lot of new players, that becomes, something that they have to prove that they can do. And that's going to be something that we'll be watching very closely in this game. And I don't think we're ever going to know it until we play a game.
All right, DC. Was that coach speak or was that legit concern that the Bama fans should have with Jawan Pass and 7 to 8, almost mirror opposite, 7 to 8 starters returning for Louisville and 3 for Alabama? Is that legitimate concern, and can Petrino take advantage of it?
I think it's a legitimate concern, Martin. I highlighted that yesterday on our podcast when we put it up. I said one of my biggest concerns is on our defense is our back-end defense. That includes all of our defensive backs and our middle linebackers covering the pass. Jawan Pass is the real deal, as Pat said earlier. I mean, he was highly recruited by Alabama, by other schools. But when Coach Saban says that, when he gives a compliment to a person asking a question, that person tapped into what he was already thinking. That question was already on his mind. I think he said it wasn't a concern, but it is a question mark in his mind. And what he said is true. We're not going to know until you play the first game and see how they play together. But I believe he legitimately has a concern about what he's seeing in practice. Look at all the practices. Look at all the scrimmages. They start pretty good, but in the end, once they lose a little bit of composure, they give up some big plays in their scrimmages, and I believe that Bobby Petrino is going to come out like he has always done, and he is going to try to exploit that. Let's face it, all off season they have had Alabama in their crosshairs. They're gunning for Alabama because they're number one. They want to beat Alabama on a national stage to shock the world, and I mean that's what he has instilled in their mind, in their psyche. Now they got some returning skill players that are phenomenal, and have got some phenomenal output. And against Alabama, they want to try to exploit the back end defense. You look at our defensive backs. I think you alluded to it earlier in the program before I came on, but I mean we're talking about 3 games that somebody has started. One, Trayvon Diggs, that was the first game of the year against Florida State, and then you got Deontay Thompson starting the last 2 games of the year. Other than that, no one's got any game time experience. And passion and excitement will take you so far until you get smashed in the mouth that first time.
That's right.
And then you got to get down to the skill and the technique. That's what's gonna take it. Now, am I overly concerned to think that Louisville's going to come in and blow Alabama away? No, I'm not, because I think our defense is skilled. We have 5-star players. They know what to do. My concern is, are we going to give up the big play toward the end of the game if it's a close game that could cost us the game? And I believe that we have one thing to our advantage in all this, Martin. I don't want to harp on the back-end defense so much because they're inexperienced. That's something they can't help. They don't have
right.
They can't fix that. Okay?
You can't play till you play.
They can't play until they play, and we're going to see how they do. But one thing we do have on this team that's going to help that is our defensive line and our outside linebackers do have experience. And the more pressure, as I said earlier, I still believe this is true. You can't throw if you're laying on your back, and I believe I believe that Coach Kuglowski is going to bring a different attitude of aggressiveness to that defensive line and get to the quarterback. I believe that Tosh Lapoy is going to have an opportunity to use the edge rushers in this game, and I believe that we're going to, if we can do that and establish that line of scrimmage, then it'll be a tough game for Dewan Pass to pick apart a young defense that might give up some plays. But if we don't establish that line of scrimmage, it may be a long day for our defense to compete in this game, and it's only because of the inexperience and playing together. One of the surprises that jumped out at me on the depth chart, I don't know if it surprised you, Martin, but you're talking about a player penciled in as a second-string linebacker who wasn't even on the team when they started fall camp.
Right.
So that sends a message that they're thin in that position of middle linebacker. My concern is what happens if Mac Wilson or Dylan Moses goes down, one of the leaders on defense, and then you got somebody else coming in to take their place, which may be a 5-star, but has no game experience, and you got a back-end defense with no game experience. Right. I think Dylan Moses and Mac Wilson are going to be fantastic linebackers, maybe the best duo we've ever had playing together at Alabama in more recent years. Of course, I think Cornelius Bennett and Derek Thomas was the best linebackers we've ever had play together at Alabama. But when you go back to the most recent years, they may be the best too. And they're athletic. But, outside of them, that depth chart shows you that we're thin at middle linebacker. So when I say the backside, I'm talking about middle linebackers all the way back to the defensive backs. That's a concern. It's a question mark. We got to let them play the game and see how they do. And I think being successful early will make a difference in this game. So if we're successful getting to the quarterback early and the defensive backfield has some success early, because that success, Martin, breeds confidence. And that's what our team needs. We need some confidence that we can go in and take care of business. We also need to have success early in defense to kind of swell this passion and excitement and enthusiasm that Louisville's going to have to come out and beat the number one team.
Yeah, you got to take that first. We'll have to take their initial punch because they're going to come out and try to throw a couple haymakers early, and we'll have to handle that. DC, the Tim Tyson, yesterday I was asking a question about biggest concern, and he said injuries. And to me, an underlying theme to this whole defensive concern is the injury. We had a couple of followers on Facebook that had a couple questions for you. So let me get to that because I told them to do that. James Brannon wanted to ask you what wide receiver will have the biggest impact week one.
In my mind, I think it's going to be Jerry Jeudy. I believe Jerry Jeudy has stepped his game up coming off that injury in the spring. He's had a great fall camp, great practices. He is a clone of, in my mind, of Amari Cooper, Calvin Ridley type. I think he's going to come out and really have a good game. So I look for him to step up in the wide receiver position. All
right. And Tim Redding had for you, DC, do you think Louisville will run a bunch of crossing patterns to cross up the Bama defenders?
I think that's a good point that Tim makes. I think that they're going to do that, but I think it's going to be more of a dedicated scheme. I think that everything that Louisville does and Bobby Petrino does, he's going to come out with looking like he's in one set, but the actual play is another set. And so the defensive backs are going to have to make on-the-fly decisions on what coverage they're in. And I think it's going to be important. But your crossing patterns are something I think they're also going to try to get isolated on players that are that are new to positions. I don't think they'll be picking on Deontay Thompson and Traylon Diggs. So I believe that Bobby Petrino will go after those players that are new.
Yeah, and I think that back to your point, I think we'll see a lot of shifts late in the play clock, or not necessarily late in the play clock, but just before they snap the ball. In other words, they'll shift one or two guys, get them reset, snap the ball, which doesn't give Alabama enough time to make the adjustment to their adjustment, because it's going to take a little time, because you got to communicate it from the sideline to the players, and hopefully Mac Wilson is that quarterback that knows it well enough that he sees it and can change it. But here's the other point, and I want to bring this up, and you just mentioned it, that I'm looking forward to. That front line, I think Tosh Lapoy is more aggressive than Pruitt and Kirby Smart. And Kuligowski, no one has taught defensive linemen how to rush the passer better than him over at Missouri and at Miami. So he has a record of creating sackers out of the defensive line versus just containers. And I think that combination is going to be critical. I know, DC, you have you've already put up the DC Capstone report. I know you break down those offensive and defensive coordinators, so we're not going to be able to get as deep into it. But just give me a quick concern or excitement, whichever way you want to go, with the offensive coordinator and the defensive coordinator. What do you see in those two guys?
Well, Michael Locksley, I'm excited about him calling plays. I think he's elevated to a point where he can really do a good job in that. I'm more excited this year because he's calling plays, and we got Dan Enos coaching quarterbacks. He doesn't have to split his time between coaching quarterbacks and calling plays. I'm excited about what he's going to be able to do. I think the players love him. I think he's going to take advantage of our skilled players really well, so I'm looking forward to that. I don't have a question on his skill. He's proven what he can do. Tosh Lapoy has never been at this level as a coordinator, but man, I am excited to see what he's going to do. I've listened to some of his talks, and I highlighted this on if you're watching any of that behind the scenes training days on ESPN. There's one point where he's teaching. He's passionate about it. He's excited. He's got energy. He's teaching all the defense, and you got Coach Saban sitting down there in the audience with his glasses on, taking notes because he's learning things as the boy is teaching. His players want to play for him, and they're excited about this aggressive play. And I think that I'm looking forward to seeing some of this pressure on the quarterback. You throw in Craig Kuligowski, just throw this out there for all your listeners just as an aside. But when your Twitter handle is "Let's meet at the quarterback," you know what he has in mind. So
That's right.
I think we're going to see some pressure on that defensive line to get to the quarterback.
Yeah, a lot of people don't realize this. A defensive lineman led the team in sacks last year, in Raekwon Davis. But Quentin Williams, who was a backup, was, I think, the number 4 overall player last year in tackles for a loss on the team. So you have some guys, and we saw what Isaiah Buggs was becoming. So I don't know how good the backups are going to be, but if that front 3 stays healthy, it could be a special time. Tim Redding throwing out at you, DC. Maybe you and I didn't hit this, but he said play calling on third down with about 7 question marks. So that's going to be his thing he's looking for as we go into this week as Alabama takes on Louisville. DC and I are planning to do something a little special. So just make sure you follow DC Capstone Report on Facebook, and he'll post up there what we're going to be doing. We're going to be doing something with Facebook from Orlando. We'll give you more details with that. Tell them how they can also follow you on Twitter, DC.
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at DavidCott50. It's DavidCott50. You can follow us on the Facebook page at the DC Capstone Report page. We also have our own website, dccapstonereport.com. And to follow Lance Shores, who works with me, he does a great job with some Alabama content. Leading up this, go to that Roll Tide Bama account, the Freelance Pictures account. He'll have all kind of free stuff up there that you can get as Alabama fans. And watch for some Facebook Live reports that he'll be putting out there. I'll be live from Orlando. Lance will be running things back here at home, and we look to give you some good content leading up this first game. All
right, that's DC in the Capstone Report. So, hey, make sure you follow DC Capstone Report on Facebook. Make sure you get David Cott 50, David Cott 50 on Twitter. so you'll be in the know. And then always go out and check out DCCapstoneReport.com. DC Capstone Report presented weekly by RollTopBama.com and Freelance. I get it right. Freelance Pictures. FreelancePictures.com. He brings you DC Report. DC, we'll catch up with you next week. Thanks for a great show.
Thanks, Martin. Roll Tide.